Welcome to the Woodbury, Village of Woodbury Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. Please rise for the pledge to the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the Woodbury Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. We meet the second Wednesday of every month. I'd like to introduce our board. To your far right, we have Mr. Joseph DiVenuto, Mr. Gary Kestenbaum, Mr. Kevin Abrams. To my far right, our attorney, Mr. Rob Dickover, our recording secretary, Jessica McLennan, and I'm Karen Unger. We are missing one board member this evening, so it is your right not to present or have deliberations if you don't want, because we do not have a full board this evening. We have one member absent. Our next meeting will be on June 12th, which is the second Wednesday of next month. We have a full agenda this evening, and I'd like to say a few things before we begin. I've never seen so many people at our zoning board meeting, so this is quite interesting. We have a lot of people, so I'm going to ask that whether you are a participant when you come to speak or whether you're just here to observe, please be kind, please be courteous. When you speak, please speak to the board, not to the general public. Please be aware that there are no personal agendas from the board. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, who you know, who you don't know. Our decisions are based on law and on the New York State law and our zoning code. With that, we'll start. Executive session, we have none this evening. Has everyone on the board read the minutes from last month, April 10th?
Motion we accept them.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? How do we vote?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Minutes have been accepted. New business, there is none. Action on decisions, none. Public hearings, please remember we only have 4 board members instead of 5, so feel free to not participate if you wish. The agenda is going to be changed. Shops at Woodbury has asked to be put on the agenda for next month. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak to Shops at Woodbury since the public hearing is still open? Do I have a motion to keep the public hearing open until next month for Shops at Woodbury?
I'll make a motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All right, so the agenda will be, Aldi's will go first, Aldi's application, then the Osweiler application, then Falkowitz, then Pulver, then Brock. So that will be the new order for the agenda. So our first application, public hearing for Aldi's Incorporated. Public hearing for an area variance to permit 2 wall signs, both having 5 colors, corporate logo, whereas pursuant to sections 31032D and 31030D1E, no more than 2 types of signage are permitted and no more than 4 colors are permitted. Said property is located in the IB zoning district within Woodbury Center at 43 Center Drive in Central Valley, and is known on the Village of Woodbury tax maps as Section 225, Block 2, Lot 1.12. I see the applicant is here. We had a little discussion here. It seems that our code says that you cannot have more than 2 signs. You're only asking for 2 signs.
That's correct. We had asked for clarification from the building department and didn't get an answer, so we went on the side of caution and...
Right, so we will need to clarify that, will we not? I don't know. There's a button on the bottom. You have to,
That's it.
yep, looking. It's very well hidden.
Okay.
Thank you.
hear me?
So,
Okay.
yeah, we will need to clarify. Right. We're definitely going to continue the public hearing, but we want to make sure, that we're on the same page with this.
Okay.
So basically what you're asking for at this point, erring on the side of caution, is 2 signs, one on the front, one on the side, because it's a corner building.
That's correct.
And both of them with the Aldi's logo, which has 5 colors, and the code does say 4 colors. How about you present, and then we'll ask our questions.
Okay, sounds good.
Please state your name for the record.
So the number of signs is no longer,
Well, we're going to clarify that. We don't think so, but
Okay.
we're going to check that out. We did... Oh, absolutely. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. We also, well, you go ahead, and then I'll continue.
Okay, so you still want me to speak to the 2 signs?
Yes, please.
Yes, okay. So good evening, members of the board. My name is Timothy Shagg with APD Engineering and Architecture. I'm joined tonight with Jonathan Ekman from Aldi. We are here this evening to request... It's working, okay. I'll hold it closer. We're here this evening to request an area variance to allow for the 2 wall signs on the new Aldi store location, and for each one of those signs to have a combination of 5 colors that are consistent with the Aldi's corporate logo. As you may be aware, Aldi recently received conditional approval from the planning board for the remodel and retrofit of a portion of the existing Kohl's department store located at the Woodbury Center. The proposed floor area for the Aldi will be approximately 25,000 square feet, with the entire store footprint fitting within the existing building floor area. The first variance I wanted to talk to was about the 5 colors. For over 30 years, Aldi's corporate logo has always consisted of a 5-color design. There have been slight modifications over the years to keep the logo fresh and relevant, but it has always consisted of 5 colors over those years. This logo is utilized by Aldi not only here in the United States, but worldwide as well. And as with most companies, Aldi's company logo is something they put a lot of great deal time in and a lot of expensive money into designing it and advertising it. And so that's very important for them to have a consistent logo for all their stores nationwide and also throughout the world for easy customer identification. The second variance that Aldi's requesting is for the installation of a second wall sign on the sidewall. So they're requesting 1 sign. This is the vignette. 1 sign here on the front of the store and the second sign on the side of the store. The existing Kohl's signage, which is currently located on the side of the store, will be removed. And so all these would go into that spot. The existing Kohl's sign is approximately 30 foot wide by 6 foot high, or about 180 square feet. The proposed Aldi signage is 10 foot by 12 foot, so 120 square feet. So it's about a 30% reduction in the actual sign area. The signage, on the side sign here, it's really critical for Aldi to have that because it does face Route 6. It gives them good exposure for vehicles traveling down there so they can see the Aldi store location and they can pull off that exit and visit the store. We feel that the variances being requested are not that substantial, nor would they produce an undesirable change in the character of the area or the nearby properties. The proposed store location is within an established commercial mall. The public has come to expect store signage that is visible and easily identifiable. Having been around such a long period of time, Aldi's 5-color logo is what the public has come accustomed to seeing and wouldn't necessarily stand out as being anything that's out of the place. Furthermore, the addition of the second sign on the side of the building is entirely consistent with what Kohl's has out there today and other commercial establishments such as, what was the other one there?
Talbot's.
Talbot's, which is also in the center. So I think with that concludes our presentation. If you have any questions for us.
The sign that you're putting up is that rectangular sign. It's not the long one that you showed here.
No, it's the rectangular one. That is their corporate signage package. So it kind of shows all the different variations of the signage shapes. But you can see that they use the same color combination.
So the 2 signs will be the 10 by 12, and both signs will be the same size, same color, same everything. Just
Exactly.
one on the side, one on the front.
One on the side, one on the front, yes.
Okay. And it's less than 10% of the wall area anyway, correct?
Yes, it is.
My only question now is the two signs. We did receive a letter from the Hampton Inn Council. They are opposed to the signs for several reasons. Apparently, there's some kind of agreement between Woodbury Center and anyone who rents, buys, or whatever in there. And we just received this today, so we didn't really get a chance to examine it, which is why it says this is what's at issue. It's apparently site plan conditions for Woodbury Center, which were approved, I guess, by the planning board way back when. With the exception of the pylon signs, this approval is not intended to constitute an approval of any of the signs shown on earlier plans and as proposed by the applicant. Approval of such plans by the planning board and/or the building inspector remains a requirement and condition of this approval. Such signs shall have 5-foot-high letters for the 5 principal stores, 4-foot-high letters for the other stores, and 3-foot-high letters for the smaller stores at the westernmost side of the project. I'm not sure legally how this applies, but you're going to give us some clarification. We're going to have to take a look at that and get it clarified because, like I said, we just received this afternoon. It was in our boxes when we got here this evening.
The only thing that I could speak to is
You need to walk up to the microphone.
the only thing that I can speak to is that if you look at the other logos throughout the center, it is just simply the name of the tenant spelled out.
Right.
Obviously, our corporate logo isn't designed that way, and our building facade is not intended to be like that. So to include that type of lettering, illuminated lettering, would be against the corporate identity that we're seeking.
And this is an illuminated sign, correct?
It will be, yes.
So illuminated, is that backlit or
Backlit with LED lighting.
Gotcha.
Yes.
I don't have a problem with the 5 colors because you can't really tell that they're 5 colors. They kind of blend together, the orange, the yellow, the red, or whatever color it is there. Board members? Anybody have anything to say?
One very small thing.
Go ahead, Joe.
Just out by the road, would it be possible to have just like blue and white? You know how they have the little tiny signs all in a kiosk kind of standard thing right alongside of Route 32? I thought there was something to multiple colors and distraction. Yours would stand out from the other ones because they tend to be like Staples is white background with red letters and so forth. If you could do something that kind of agrees with that out there, it's a very small sign.
And you're speaking to the pylon signs, correct?
Yes, out by Route 32.
So just to clarify, we're not seeking any approvals of any kind for pylon signs today, just the 2 building signs. I know that the landlord for the center is working through approvals to revise the pylon signs, and once I have confirmation of that, I will come back for pylon sign approval, and I will take note of that when working with them to design our panel.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Gary?
Gents, I'm referring to the planning board minutes February 6th of this year. And it speaks to comments by Mr. Ekman.
Yep.
Chairperson, I'm going to read what it says. I don't know if you have a copy. But Chairperson Hunter asked about the sign. Mr. Ekman said the sign would be internally lit within the skin and then backlit with LED lighting. Fair so far? Mm-hmm. It will be illuminated from dusk to dawn. He said he understood that there is a limit of 4 colors. Their sign has 5, but he said he would work through the process. What did you mean by that?
Probably a variance process.
Yep.
Well,
That we would be right here today. And just to clarify,
you didn't mean that you'd suck it up and redesign the 4 colors?
that was not the intention. And just to clarify as well, the sign will not be lit from dusk to dawn. It will go off after a period of time. So that's on operations side, but it will not be illuminated the entire night.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Kevin, anything? We need to keep the public hearing open because of this two-sign.
Oh, we can't clarify that?
Well, we need to clarify it. We need to read through this document we got today, right? And what?
The other issue with respect to whether or not the planning board decision binds them to not do this, the size of the sign.
The size? Oh, I don't,
Yeah,
No,
whether the planning board approval document precludes.
this one you're talking about. Yeah, that's what I mean. I think it's,
Because they may bind themselves having to have the planning board recommend something.
Right,
yeah,
'cause
it
they
was the
must-
planning board. It was in 2001, October 17th, 2001. It just says approval of such plans remains a requirement and condition. I don't know.
And Hampton
We're gonna have
Inn
to
is
look at
part
this.
of that. They were
Well, they're
all
part of-
by themselves.
Yeah, but they're part of Woodbury Center, I believe.
They
I just-
they are not. I clarified with the
Okay, that
landlord.
was-
They are not a part of the center.
They are
have
not
an
part of the
easement.
center.
They have an
Easement
easement to
through the-
access Center Drive, and that is it.
Okay. So,
Does the zoning board provide or evaluate, provide opinions on prior planning board approvals? If there's a question about what the language meant, does that come to us for interpretation?
Only on an appeal.
I'm sorry?
Only on an appeal.
Guys, turn your mics on, I'm sorry. I can barely hear you. Actually.
is yours?
Gary?
Mine's on. You gotta get it.
You got to talk into it, Gary.
Put it on your lap.
Details. All right, so until we get clarification on legal clarification, I guess we need to keep this public hearing open, correct? I mean, we're going to hear from the public, but
I mean, if you ask me, I'm satisfied. If we only have to deal with the fifth color, then I'm already satisfied.
right, but we need to address. Oh, yes, we will. Any other comments from the board at this time?
I would say carry over and clarify, and then.
Well, I'm
go
going to
on
hear from the
next.
public first.
Obviously.
After, yeah. All right, anything else that you'd like to add?
So quick question, because I know that's a planning board document.
This was a planning board document, yes, from 2001.
So just so I understand, so from the zoning board's perspective, are you just looking at the sign colors and the two signs? Or does it kind of meld into that?
I'm
as
not
well?
sure. That's why we need clarification. Definitely the 5 colors, whether it's 2 signs or not, and the size and whatever. I'm not sure. It seems to be a gray area. I thought it was a black and white area, but apparently it's gray.
It's gray area. Because I think, I don't want to speak necessarily for Aldi, but I think we'd like to be able to get a decision tonight if at all possible. That sounds like it's maybe a bit of a challenge.
I don't know that we'll be able to do a decision this evening.
I think one thing is certain, you have an application for 5 colors. The public needs to be heard on that. Perhaps the board will act on that, I don't know. But the second question was your 2 signs where your application says 1 is allowed. That seems to be in question as to whether or not you need a variance at all for that.
Right.
And so the board's going to need to keep the public hearing open in order to hear that matter further, both tonight and at a later date. The third issue that now has been put in front of the board by a member of the public, an attorney for Comfort Inn, is a question of whether or not your application would violate the terms and conditions of the site plan approval for the shopping center. And whether or not this board has the power to vary that is a question that I'll have to answer for this board, but it may well be that you'll have to go back to the planning board for amendment of those site plan conditions. And we'll have to give you an opinion upon that. And you may want to have your attorney chime in. Certainly, you should get a copy of the letter that's been presented to this board by that attorney so you can understand what his question and what his point is.
Okay.
Anything else that you'd like to add before we hear from the public?
No.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in the first row who would like to speak to this application? Second row?
Neil Kraus, Highland Mills. Long story short, I chaired the, when I was a village trustee, I chaired the committee that did the current sign ordinance, where we had the 4 colors. We didn't want Route 32 to look like a circus as you drove down with the different colors. However, where there's a corporate logo involved that helps the public identify, I believe in this case where it's only one more color, it's not going to make a difference. I think one of the board members mentioned Staples. Their corporate colors are a red background with white print. The color combination down at Fridays is their corporate colors, and so where the corporate colors are involved, and it helps the public identify a corporation that provides a service. I think one additional color is not going to make a difference. And that was not the intent of the law when we wrote it. It was to keep a lot of different colors appearing on signs. We were told by the attorney at the time we wanted to have like a colonial blue with white print or gold print, or colonial, like the maroon color with the gold or white throughout Woodbury. But again, we were looking at freedom of speech and First Amendment rights and stuff. So the attorney advised us we couldn't really have that. But in this case, I think I would support the 5 colors here. Okay, the intent of the law was not to restrict something, but it was just, like I said, not to have a circus up and down 32. And I believe it's set far enough back, it doesn't really interfere with anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kraus. Anyone else in the second row? Third row? Fourth row? I think we have a fifth row. Last row? Anyone on the side? Anybody else wish to speak to this application? Does the applicant have anything more to say before we'll keep the public hearing open until next month, obviously.
I did have one more question. The lettering for the signage, I'm just looking at it. Do you remember what the height restriction was for Aldi from that document?
No, it's a 10%, no.
No, not
Oh,
the sign area, but the,
I don't know if it's considered small, large,
okay,
according to that document of 2001, you mean?
yes.
It just had 5 foot, 4 foot, and 3 foot letters. Smaller stores were 3 foot,
And when you, and I'm looking at all these.
but I think they were talking about individual letters,
Oh, just
like for coal, I don't know. It's 18 years ago.
Yeah.
Things have changed.
Good size right there.
All right. Do I have a motion to keep the
I'll make a motion, we continue the public hearing to June
12?
12th? That's the date?
I second Kevin's motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we're going to keep this public hearing open until next month, and hopefully by then we'll have a clarification on the issues that we have right now. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is the Osweiler application.
Before you start, I'm going to recuse myself from this hearing, so
Alrighty,
I'll be floating around.
okay. For the Osweiler public hearing for a use variance to permit the use of an existing building containing a non-conforming use to operate a taxi dispatch office, whereas pursuant to Section 310-43.2B3, any non-conforming use, quote, shall not be changed to another non-conforming use without the approval by the Zoning Board of Appeals, and then only to a use which, in the opinion of said board, is of the same or of a more restrictive nature, end of quote. Said property is located in the R 2.25 acre zoning at 19 Adams Street in Highland Mills, is known on the Village of Woodbury tax maps as Section 220, Block 2, Lot 15.1. Could I ask the people who are having side conversations to please keep them down? It's really difficult for the people who are in the audience to hear. Thank you so much. I did change the agenda. Is the applicant present? Because if not, we'll just keep it. Would you please state your name for the record?
Ed Romine from Osweiler Brothers.
Mr. Romine, okay. And you are the owner of the property? Okay, so what we have, what was there before was a scale?
Correct. Scale operation.
Scale operation. So that was from 1991 to 2017, when you
Correct.
retired. You
Well,
sold the business?
Sold the scale operation business. I'm still operating, but the scale business is gone. Not operating out of there now.
You're operating, I thought you were retired.
Osweiler Brothers, I'm semi-retired. I'm still working because I have to pay the taxes on this building that I can't sell.
Okay, so you still have the business at that location?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. You didn't give us any kind of a plan for your taxi dispatch service. We have no site plan, we have no description. In order for us to go from a one non-conforming use to another non-conforming use, it has to be of the same or a more restrictive use. And in order for us to be able to decide that, you would need to provide us with what the previous business was, what the expected business is, so that we could make that comparison. What can you tell us right now?
Well, what they're going to want to do is provide a taxi dispatch service out of the building.
So does that mean, yeah,
They're not going to have taxis there, but they dispatch out of that and use it as office space. They're not going to have cars parked there. They want to keep it very quiet there. I mean, really, they run from 9 o'clock in the morning till about 10 o'clock at night, and not on weekends. So, but their plan is to they need a place for dispatch. They've got places where they park their cars because they've got too many cars. That lot is not big enough for cars. So that's the whole idea on that.
so basically this is office space that's going to be used?
Yes.
But in somewhere in your application, you mentioned that the garage may be used for storing equipment.
They're talking about expanding the office space into the garage area a little bit and then use the rest of it for some storage space, or maybe have to pull a car inside or something and leave it back in there or something just to get it out of the way.
Okay. Whoa. Wait, public needs to wait before they ask questions or speak. You will have your turn. We're going to need a description of the original business that you have there now. You know, the hours, the number of vehicles, employees,
We need a
whatever.
summary document.
Right. And then we need what the,
I didn't understand what you said.
You need to create a summary document answering all the questions that
Okay.
Karen is describing and explaining section by section what was and what is.
right. In other words, we can't make a comparison of whether it's more or less restrictive unless we know what's there now and what,
Well, what's been there for 20-some years?
right.
Okay. I thought that everybody knew what we did there.
Not everybody. We need to document it, though.
Yeah, well, okay. All right.
So basically what you're saying is that the plan is for whoever is buying to use the building for office space,
Correct.
for dispatch. The cabs are parked elsewhere.
Right, other than the employees will park there when
Well,
they're there, yeah,
how many employees do you believe there would be?
They were talking 3 to 4 cars in the parking lot.
Okay. So when you give us your summary, you need to give us, the number of vehicles you
Sure.
think would be there, how many employees, the hours, any equipment, how many, I guess if there's no vehicles, we don't need to know the trips, number of trips that would be generated, because there's no cabs there.
Right,
Correct.
they're being dispatched probably over the phone. They don't come to their
Right,
dispatch.
right,
They just call them up
gotcha.
and say, go over wherever.
Okay, until we get that information, I don't have any more questions. What about you, Gary and Joe? I really don't have questions because I don't know enough about it to ask questions. So probably next month I would have more questions. Joe and Gary, you have any questions?
Just, we'd have to have a comparative of the traffic you generated, the vehicles you generated, like the beginning of the day, middle of the day, end of the day kind of thing, versus the new business, a little bit more precise maybe on the business hours. And I personally would like to know where the cars are stored when they're not there,
Okay.
or where the people have to go. Let's say if there's no calls, where do they go to away?
Well, it's an operating taxi service now, so they're obviously have somewhere that they're at.
I would just like to be more specific.
Right.
That's, we're obliged to do that.
Sure.
Gary, you have anything?
To follow up with what Joe said, the large roll-up doors facing,
The
not
houses?
Hunter, but.
Yeah, the houses.
Were those an improvement to the original structure?
The original structure had 4 of those long, big doors in the front. We took, no, they had 3, I'm sorry. We took 2 of them out and put them on the end.
So you always had high bay
Always had
doors, you
high-
just moved them?
I moved them, yeah, because our truck wouldn't fit in crossways, it had to go in lengthways, so that's why we had to change it.
So in keeping with, consistent with what Joe said, you might want to explain the traffic, the vehicles that you had pulling up to those high bays and the like, if you're going to demonstrate that
Well, they were just storage bays. I mean, we just parked them inside at night. We didn't,
what I'm saying, if you're going to demonstrate, if your intent is to demonstrate that the new use is less restrictive, make sure that you
More restrictive.
add specifics.
It should be more restrictive.
Excuse me, right. More restrictive, less intrusive.
Correct.
Make sure that you add in what those high bays were for, the vehicles that they were intended to support, et cetera,
okay.
in the summary.
Yeah, we didn't put them in. They were already in, but we just moved them.
Well, that you used them for.
Right, okay, well, yeah.
The other-
Most of them I have set, they only go halfway high anyway, because we just drive cars in. But,
The other thing that left me, again, please comment on this. You don't have to comment to me, but comment in the summary. What left me scratching my head is that I had this perspective that a taxi dispatch location is, and I'm saying this facetiously, a closet, meaning a small place where you're sitting there with a computer, a cell
True.
phone, and communications. You're waiting for calls to come in saying, I need a cab. You are dispatching the cab now through cell phone because nobody uses radio anymore. And you're documenting that on a laptop. So I'm kind of scratching my head when you're saying that they're thinking about expanding the office space
Well,
into the
they-
high bay area. So, but the point is this, you
Right.
have an intent.
we'll spell it.
Add that in,
Yeah,
add
we'll
that,
spell it. All right.
so we fully understand that.
Sure.
Because to me, the size of the building one would need to dispatch cabs, and this building this is overkill. But again, just explain it, please.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Could what we need also is some kind of proof that for the past year or so, you've been operating the business from that location?
I've been in
Work
and out.
orders,
Yeah.
invoices, or, something?
I don't know what kind of proof to give you other than,
An affidavit, maybe?
Yeah, some kind of an affidavit. Would that be,
Some examples of proof might be work orders that you filled from that location.
Oh, absolutely, no
Invoices that were paid from that location. Utility bills showing that the building was heated during the winter months.
Absolutely, got all of that.
And maybe the most persuasive would be some live testimony from customers who were serviced at that location.
We don't do any service at the location, all my service is remote. In other words, you're saying have people come, people do not come to
No,
me,
they
I
don't.
go to them.
Okay. You have customers whose vehicles or the scales were worked on there for you, that you were operating out of that location?
Yeah,
So, again, live testimony from folks like that would be,
well, most of them are Long Island, work in Delaware, Maryland. Get somebody here.
Would
by-
the,
an affidavit from them?
We could probably do that, I mean, I guess.
Anything else you can think of
Yeah,
that would
all right.
indicate or prove to the board that you were actually working out of that location? It's an important question for the board on this kind of a request.
Okay. We can do that.
any other questions from the board before I open it up to the public? Joe? No? Thank you, Mr. Elmore. Is there anyone in the first row who would like to speak to this application? Second row? Third row? Fourth row?
Hi, my name is Scott Dasher, and I live at 26 Park Avenue. I just a couple of houses, 3 houses down from the building. And I was here probably, I don't know, maybe it was a year ago when Mr. Osweiler had another applicant for a variance. I'm sorry? Mr. Bowman, Osweiler, the Osweiler Corporation. And it reminds me very much of that time in that there wasn't any plans that were presented to the board. And there was clearly some unknowns with regards to the intent of the building. At that time, it was going to be a warehouse, which could sell everything from car parts to furniture, as you know, self-confessed by the intended buyer. This, to me, is in many ways worse from a traffic perspective. I really, to your point, Mr. Kastenbaum, you know, I can run a taxi dispatch from my cell phone. I don't need a commercial garage. So what really concerns me is, you know, as Mr. Kraus said, we didn't want a circus on Route 32 simply by colors. We really don't want a circus on the corner of Park Avenue and Adams as a result of cars coming and going and you know, cars being left outside and repaired. And, you know, as you know, there's a very active softball field that was just had a practice or a game as I was on my way here. The last thing we need is cars coming and going. A concern would be to say, yeah, well, we're not going to have cars there, but then all of a sudden things change and we have no recourse other than maybe to pay fines or something. It just doesn't add up. So I'm very concerned about that. So with regards to the restrictive nature of the variance, you know, this is a very different business model that is clearly not appropriate for the intended use of a dispatch office. That's clearly an unsuitable environment for a dispatch office, but it certainly is suitable for a place to store cars and have cars coming and going and so on and so forth. So I hope you're seeing that. That's my comment. I appreciate your hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I forgot what row I'm in. Okay, that was the fourth row. Anyone in the fifth row? Oh, yes, sir.
This will be real quick. Rob Stauffer, Highland Mills. Just a real quick question, excuse my ignorance. Is it normal to have it seems like the cart before the horse, for the current owner to come in and request a variance like this for an unknown buyer? Wouldn't it be normal for the buyer to come in and request this?
He's the owner of the property.
Okay.
So
It just seems,
it's,
okay, then it just seems a little backwards.
I would think the buyer probably wants approvals before they buy, and only the owner can get that.
Karen,
So that's the reason. Go ahead, Gary.
can I make one comment? This is a general comment to everybody. There is a document online that any of you can access on the New York State Department of State website, and it addresses all of the challenges, criteria, and descriptions associated with use variances and area variances. And it would be highly valuable for any of you who has a dog in the game, so to speak, to read through this document, find it on the DOS website, it's not difficult to find, and seek out the pages describing step by step, item by item, what is a use variance and what is the criteria, what is an area variance, what is the criteria. Would be very helpful to you all.
Thank you, Gary.
Where is that located?
New York State Department of State, New York.gov, but NYDOS, NIDOS, New York State Department of State, and it would be under planning and zoning. It's easy to find.
And it's a use variance?
It's the Coon series, COON series, on land use and planning for lay people, for those of us that are not attorneys. And it's a very valuable document. It explains the basis for everything. Gives you a better perspective when you come in before the board.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
I'm Millicent Traylor. I live at 21 Park Avenue, and I would like to comment on all of the traffic of the kids when they're off school, going back and forth to that softball field. There are gaggles of kids. There are adults who walk with babies in strollers, dog walk, jog, and the kids are just amazing. I mean, they're all over the street. They're on bicycles and skateboards and going back and forth to that park. And any kind of significant traffic is a danger to the kids. It's not just the softball park, but the St. Patrick's Church has a big field with CYO events. And last fall, the police did a traffic study of cars for speed. But, no one's done any kind of survey, really, of all the pedestrian traffic that goes from Hollow Street to that park and back, and especially by little kids who do not always look both ways. So, I mean, any kind of significant traffic in there is just not suitable for this kind of residential area. And, it just doesn't make sense that they wouldn't have taxis there and what have you, and I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the, yes, ma'am?
Hello, I'm Laura Stevens. I live on 15 Adams Street, right next to the property in question. And I believe that they were saying out of that Osweiler building they had been using that office all this time. I live right next door. That property has been vacant. They just mowed the lawn today for the first time in over a month. So I contest that the claim that he's making that a business has been running out of there till now. Also, I would like to request a full business plan to determine what's going to be happening, not just the number of employees, but should they be bringing a car that needs maintenance into that garage? What's going to happen to the byproducts of that? Tires, are they going to be loaded outside? Are they going to be disposed of properly? Technically, they're not outside, but if they're inside the garage for service purposes, which is what I would see this particular property more used for, that we need a full business plan to find out what's going to go on. The traffic, the increased traffic, even though the cars, they say, won't be in that location, we have a bus stop right across the street from that property that I see the children walking to school in the morning, and I believe the time they said that the business would start was 8 a.m. Well, that's when the kids are going out to their buses, and they have to cross that property in order to get there. So it's not just, you know, we do have a lot of traffic and children. It's a small pocket park, which is designed for just this purpose, where the kids could come from the local neighborhood and play. Extra traffic, as if anyone's driven down Adams Street, you will see that when there's a softball game going on, you can't get more than one car down that road. And I would be really concerned, taxi drivers looking at their GPSs, not paying attention. It would be a real safety hazard. But again, I also concerned with what's going to happen with the property as far as if it's going to become unsightly because of used tires or automotive repairs. What's going to happen with the oils and things? Are they going to be disposed of according to the rules and the laws and not just dumped on the property or leaked on the property? If there's a leak, is something going to be done? So I would prefer to see a full business plan, how it's all written out, what the use of the property will be. And I thank you for that suggestion as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else in the fifth row? Sixth row? Yes, sir.
Good evening. Mike Essick, Highland Mills. I live on Hunter, so Hunter, which goes right into Adams Street. So I remember his trucks coming down. Actually, a beautiful truck. I mean, they used to come down. They come down at pretty excessive speed. But you know, listen, he's coming around the turn. They understand. They back into their driveway and they back into the garage. And you never saw the truck. I mean, once the roller went down, that was the end of it. But he pretty much was done. Pretty much at 3:30, 4 in the afternoon is pretty much when he was done. Now we're asking to go pretty much to an open operation. As it's been stated this evening, you have a ball field. You can only park on one side of the street anyway by law. So as you have cars on the other, you can barely get through. And then as you come around, what are you gonna do? You're just gonna, there's nothing else to go. You can only go to Park or come on to Hunter. It's the only other access out if you wanna get back onto Route 32. So you have to understand, a study definitely needs to be done because the amount of flow that would take up, someone's gonna get seriously injured. If they decide to bring those taxi cabs here. I don't know about that. But also, I do agree with some of the residents that also stated, building's been vacant, we know that. I mean, we don't see any movement anymore, so we know our neighborhoods, we know who lives there, we know when someone's not. Everybody watches everybody's house. We have a beautiful residence, we love our neighborhood. I'm not saying what they, you know, as an office space, I don't have a problem with offices. My problem is the flow of traffic, the amount of health and welfare, and the safety of children, and the safety of everybody. We walk our animals there. I mean, it's a very small, you need to, if you haven't, obviously we all residents, drive down the street, you'll see as a softball game is operating, you can barely get down the street. So I don't understand how something like this could be approved, but I agree with that. The point is a summary document, and I'd like to see the application when it's brought in front also, to see what it's made of. But that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else in the fifth row? Sixth row? Anyone standing, sitting? Anyone else need to speak to this application? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Melvin. I live on 5 Adams Street.
Could you give your last name, please?
Mejia.
Mejia, thank you.
I agree with my neighbors here. There has been no business at the location the past couple of years. I also contest the fact that this gentleman stated that he was running a business there. And not just as far as being a member of the community in the last couple of years, I would also like to see a guarantee how many fleet vehicles they're gonna have, because that's another question. They could start with 5 vehicles, 3 employees. Next thing you know, they have buses, multiple cabs, and it's gonna end up being like a small city in the, it's gonna be like the city. No parking, people fighting, there's no sidewalks at the location. That's actually like a park street. It's kind of like a trail. I agree with the safety. There's not a sidewalk at that location. There's parking only on one side of the street, just like he said. I think this is the rules to expand another business there, and that's just my opinion. But I hope you guys see it for what it is. That's all.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to speak to this application? You need to come to the podium, please. Comments right now.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Zumas. I live right next door to the building on 23 Hunter Street. We have a tremendous amount of empathy. I have a tremendous amount of empathy for Mr. Romine. He's got this building that's non-conforming that he can't sell. Do you have the ability to tell us what the conforming use of this really is? What would be the conforming use of this?
It's quarter-acre zoning.
Okay.
Single-family dwellings.
So really, the only option would be to tear down what's there and build a single-family dwelling there to be a conforming use. There is no other option. So any other would have to come through this process, correct?
Right, whether it be a special permit, use permit, area variance. Yes.
And I apologize, I have not seen that document, so I'm a little bit ignorant to the process. It's a great community that we have there. It's a very residential. We have the church right around the block. We have a wonderful park at the end of the block, the softball fields. I have 2 young children. The neighborhood, the whole block, there's 30, 40 children that are up and down that street at all times. I think that it's going to be a difficult process to find a non-conforming, safe use for that lot. I think that with the improvements that we've made to the town and what we're seeing now with the neighborhood, with the church, with the activity there, I think that we really have to determine the overall quality of the town, the neighborhood, and its residents there, keeping in mind the options that Mr. Romine may or may not have. It's unfortunate. I would hate to have to pay property taxes on something that I can't sell and I can't use anymore. But perhaps a better option may be to determine a conforming use that would allow this process to not have to take place and endanger or jeopardize the health and safety of the surrounding community members. So again, if I just wanted to ask and get some clarification on that, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to this application? Do I have a motion to keep the public hearing open until next month? So when we get the information from Mr. Romine, so we can actually make some more educated decisions?
I make a motion to carry this over to keep the public hearing open and carry this over to next month.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All righty.
Pressing the flesh, kissing. It's getting warm in here. When he's good, they're ready. He has to trust the flesh first.
I was getting ready to go home.
Missed you terribly. Missed you terribly.
I bet.
This isn't all my year. All righty. Next application is for Mr. Falkowitz. This is a public hearing for a use variance and special permit to demolish and rebuild a dwelling containing a non-conforming 3-family and replacing it with a 2-family dwelling. Pursuant to Section 310-43.2B, Number 3, a non-conforming use, quote, shall not be changed to another non-conforming use without the approval of the Zoning Board of Appeals, and then only to a use in which, in the opinion of said board, is of the same or more restrictive in nature." End of quote. Furthermore, the applicant proposes to expand the non-conforming dwelling by up to 10%, whereas pursuant to Section 310-43.2C, the Zoning Board of Appeals may issue a special permit for the expansion of a non-conforming use of a building, provided the expansion meets certain criteria set forth in Section 310-43.2C1 and 2 of the Village Code. Said property is located in the R2A zoning district at 12 Skytop Road in Highland Mills and is known on the Village of Woodbury tax maps as Section 217, Block 3, Lot 4. Is the, yes, Mr. J. Myro, the applicant is present.
Wouldn't be normal without.
You have to have me for one, right?
At least.
All right.
Excuse me, I got a lot of documents for this application. When you speak to anything that's updated, can you just go by either date or
Sure.
document numbers?
Yeah, I have some questions too as to what you might have in your pile, but
Before we begin, can I just recap this so that
yeah,
we all kind of are on the same page? So last year, in July, correct, the applicant came before us for a use variance to demolish the existing three-family home and construct another three-family home. But that application was withdrawn because they couldn't meet the use requirement,
I wasn't
variance.
representing
Right,
the
you were not,
applicant at that time.
right, representing them. Then in November of that same year, same property, an applicant came before us for an area variance. There were two plans. This is when you came in, Mr. Myro, correct? Two plans to demolish and rebuild, but the zoning, we told you that the zoning at that point, once you demolish the building, the protection of the non-conforming use was no longer available to you, and you would have to rebuild to a conforming use. You then you sent a letter to Mr. Thomas Berger in February, asking if going from a three-family to a two-family was less restrictive. You talked about adding the second story and the 10% footprint, and you cited some court cases. And Gary and Mr. Thomas Berger said that your non-conforming protection was lost with the demolition, and you had to rebuild as a conforming use with up to 10% of the floor area. Correct? Is that right so far?
I just want to bring up one point. It's my recollection that you were advised by counsel and Gary that it was us, that an expansion to the second floor was not available to us as an area variance because you were limited to only granting 10% expansion pursuant to that one section. It wasn't necessarily the demolition that was going to get us in trouble. It was the fact that we were not permitted because you had a special permit regulation that limited to 10%. We couldn't go beyond 10%.
Of the footprint?
Of the footprint, correct. Of the footprint.
No?
No, of the total area.
That's what I meant.
No, no.
I'm sorry.
Right,
That's-
of the total area. The two floors combined, you had to total those. If that square footage was greater than the existing, and we only have a one-story, then we were limited to 10%. I know council had advised you that way. I chose to ask Mr. Thomas Berger to rule on that issue. He agreed that we were limited to the 10%. However, as it wasn't necessarily the demolition that was going to get us in trouble here, because we are asking that we be permitted to, when we rebuild this place as a two-family, that we be allowed to demolish and rebuild the entire structure. And I think Gary has been of the opinion for the time I've been dealing with him that the board's allowed this in the past. We submitted the engineer's report from Fellenser saying that this foundation is shot. It would be basically impossible for us to do this in stages. So I just want to clarify that that's part of what we're asking the board to allow us to do tonight. Number one, confirm that we're going to a more restrictive use by going from 3 to 2. Number two, we acknowledge we can only go to 10%, and we believe the plans we've submitted, the map Mr. Dillon submitted limits us to a 10% expansion. And number three, that we're permitted to do this in one shot because the property's really, it has a structural problem, a really significant structural problem.
So your third point is that you would have to demolish the building in order to accomplish those goals?
Listen, the only effective way to do it, and I believe Gary understood that, and asked me to make sure I submitted to this board the report we had from Fellens, our structural engineer, saying that, there's basically no way to practically do this without taking the whole thing down. The other thing is, if you remember, when we came in with the two plans, one of them was a drawing where we would have built right over the existing footprint. And that existing footprint has a encroachment on the rear yard setback. So the second plan we did, and I believe this was the one that you guys liked, was we relocated the building as much over the existing footprint as we could, but we cured the rear yard setback. So I think that, my recollection, and Mr. Dillon drew it that way, we're not exactly right over the top of the foundation, so we couldn't really, we'd have to demolish to build it the way I believe that the board was preferential in that case. The end result is you're going to get a new building either way, and it's going to have a 10% expansion, and it's going to be reduced from a 3 to 2, which is good.
I don't know about I thought the demolition was a big issue. It was my understanding, according to the code, that once you have a non-conforming building and then you demolish it, by demolishing that building, the non-conformity is now not protected.
Unless we do it with permission.
Is that true?
Yes, we haven't done it. The building's up. If we went out and we didn't have an approval that allowed us to demolish and rebuild, yes, we would lose it. But we're here, we haven't done that. The building exists. It's a 3-family. It can be used as a 3-family. It's dilapidated. It really needs to be rebuilt. We're prepared to reduce from 3 to 2, which I think is a significant concession on our, not a concession, but a significant gesture on our part. If this, Gary, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he said it was his recollection that the board's allowed this to occur before. We have a practical difficulty in that the place is really, the foundation's shot. So for us to sit there, to do it in phases for no real purpose. But if you think about it, if it was the desired plan for us to move it within the setback line, and I believe it was, we don't have a choice but to demolish and rebuild. And if you give us that permission, we wouldn't be losing our non-conforming status. We'd be doing it pursuant to an approval from the board. Mr. Dickover looks at me like.
Is that accurate, that we can give permission for him to override the code? And by giving permission for him to demolish, he can then build a non-conforming building?
If you'd like me to express my opinion, I would on that.
I need it.
All right, then my opinion would be that if you demolish the building, you will lose the right to the nonconformity. Whether it's destroyed by fire or purposely torn down, the building is demolished, it's been devalued by more than 50% of its value, and your nonconforming use will be lost. Having that happen, you would not have the right to now replace it with another nonconforming use.
Okay. So I'll advise that on April 18, I sent a letter to Mr. Thomas Berger.
I've seen the letter, Jay, but I haven't seen a response to
Right,
it. You've
so
alluded to a verbal response, but I haven't seen it.
My point is, I would like Gary to chime in and give his interpretation as to whether under these circumstances we would lose our nonconforming by demolishing. I think we have the right to have Gary chime in on that. I asked for the interpretation, we didn't get it. Yeah. So I think I need that if the board's going to take a position that we're in trouble here. The other thing I would need is some explanation as to how I'm supposed to relocate the foundation at the board's request to a point. I have to demolish to relocate it to cure that setback. So it's really a catch-22.
Jay, if I may, he opined in his March 8th letter in the second paragraph, almost the exact same thing council just stated. Gary Thomas Berger, you have that letter, do you not?
Right. was that in response to my request?
It's addressed to J. Myro Esquire. It says, "Dear Mr. Myro."
Okay, so I don't.
What's the date? What's the date on the letter?
March 8th,
All right.
2019.
Yeah, the answer to this is Mr. Myro's letter that he's alluding to was dated April 18th.
But he did
The building
opine-
inspector prior to that may have opinioned on that already, but it looks like Mr. Myro has asked him the question again. I don't know.
The issue that was raised, I believe in my letter that resulted in the inquiry I made at that time was whether or not we had the ability to seek an area variance in addition to that 10% expansion requirement. I believe the board had taken the position that because the special permit allowance for 10% was all we were entitled to get. I disagreed with that. I said that they're two separate issues. So it's my recollection that I opined to this, we were adjourned so I could get an opinion from Gary, and he may have, listen, I haven't looked at that letter since, when is it, March?
March 8th.
I mean, I'll be happy to look at it, but it was my recollection that that was the limit of what I was asking. When I talked to Gary, I submitted this letter after a phone conversation with Gary on the day I submitted it. He was there with our client, he was reviewing the plan. I asked him what he would like in my letter because he wanted a letter from me stating exactly what we requested. The letter says I want confirmation that we can go from a 3 to 2, that we were allowed to do the 10% expansion, and number 3, as to whether or not we can demolish and build without losing the non-conforming status. We haven't got an answer to that part, in my opinion. Now, he may have opined that in the letter, but my conversation with Gary was, when I did this, please send me the felons or engineer report again so I can look to make sure that there's a real practical difficulty here to rebuild it. So if the board's inclined to say, I have to do this, number 1, you're going to tell me I have to move back to the original footprint because I can't demolish.
What we're saying is if you demolish, you need to rebuild to a conforming
Which is
building,
a
single-family home.
Right, and we're not prepared to do that.
And I don't know that we're prepared.
Well, no, I mean, listen, we can demolish 40% at one point, finish it, demolish another 40%, finish it, demolish the remaining 20%, finish it. As long as we're not demolishing more than 40% at a time, I guess that's the way it's a completely ridiculous exercise.
Is that a loophole?
But absolutely. We're never going to, if we choose not to demolish more than 49% of the thing, if 50% is the criteria, we demolish it, build it, demolish 49%, and then we demolish 2% and build it. We've never at any point demolished more than 49% of the building.
Jay, there's one flaw in what you're saying, though, is that you're saying 49% of the building. It says 50% of its fair market value. If you destroy half of a building, that's worth a lot less than 50% of its value.
What I'm saying is that we will not demolish more than what is allowed under the code. If it's 50% of fair market value, we'll demolish 45%. If it's whatever the number is, we're going to make sure, if that's the way you want us to do it, we'll do it in pieces. I think it's completely ridiculous, but...
And then you'd have a 3-family again.
And we would do it as a 2-family. If we want the 10% expansion. If we don't want the 10% expansion, we don't need to be here. We can keep it as a 3 with exactly the same footprint we have now. We'll build it in stages, and you got a 3-family at exactly the same footprint we have now. So...
Wow.
So Rob, in other words, renovation meets the criteria for maintaining, but demo does not?
If the building's value is decreased by more than 50% because of renovation, tearing it down or raising it to do the renovation, that's what the code speaks to.
Well, to me, tearing it down, that's demo, that's not reno.
I agree.
I'm just saying, so they need to meet the criteria, the definition of renovate, whatever Gary determines that is, renovation.
No, it's not the value of the renovation, it's the value of the
No,
structure.
not the reno of not the value of the renovation. What I'm saying is the activity that has to take place. What they've got to perform to maintain is a renovation of the property, just like
But
anybody
as
can
long as
renovate.
I could take down less than 50% of my house if I wanted
Yeah,
to.
just because Kevin is renovating
There's a
his house
conforming house, though,
doesn't mean he's
Kevin.
destroying the value, he's dropping the value. It's a work in progress. My point is, doesn't he need to get verification from Gary that he's renovating, not demoing?
He's telling us what he's going to do.
Well, they would have to get a
So
building.
it's-
If you're below 50%.
I don't know that we need that from the building inspector.
But he would have to get a building
There's
permit.
demolition involved in any renovation.
I agree, but there's also destruction or evaluation and the valuation in that destruction or raising of the building.
It would be our
Yeah,
obligation.
Jay, there's demo
That's
down
just being
to
nitpicky, isn't it?
down to the ground. And there's demo of a bathroom, let's say,
You know?
for example.
Isn't
You
that
made the
just
point
being
that you were going to
nitpicky?
consider
They're both
doing it
demolition.
in stages.
They're both demolition.
If we can't do anything, then let's say we can't do anything and move on. We just can't keep pushing these all month to month to month to month to month. The list will be a mile long.
So basically, what,
Well, Mr. Myro's written a letter asking for an opinion from the building inspector on 3 issues. I don't know that we have a written determination on that. It sounds like
didn't.
this application may be a bit of a moving target. Jay, are you at this point, well, you've been here for quite a while, and I'm sure the board would like to see this come to a conclusion at some point.
No, I'm happy to listen.
I
I'm
admire your
happy to submit the
persistence.
issue.
Listen, if the board feels that once he tears down the old building, he would not have his conforming use, and if the board's not willing to give him that, then we should just say no. Why keep dragging this on and on and on and on?
we legally can't say that he can we?
Why
In other
can't-
words, if he tears down the existing building, which is a 3-family, we cannot, because he's now lost the non-conforming protection, we cannot then give him permission to build another non-conforming building, correct?
My opinion on that was dragged out of me this evening, yes.
Okay.
Then let's,
I just,
then let's move on with it. Let's be done with it. If we can't do it, we can't do it.
do we need to
Drag
wait
it
for a
on to
letter
next
from,
month, and then next month, and
if we get a letter from Gary, it doesn't matter what.
Well, it would
because
be,
doesn't matter
it would
what
be
Gary
another
says.
application, I suppose, from Mr. Myro based on Gary's response to the April 18th letter. It may be determined by this board tonight, but we would have to see what Gary says in response to Mr. Myro's inquiry.
So there's 2 issues. Number one, I thought I had direction from the board last time that you wanted us to move the house. I thought you wanted us to cure the rear yard setback. I'm now hearing that you don't, that there's no, because there is no way that we can cure the rear yard setback, build a house without a demolition. So what we've submitted to you is a drawing based on that direction. You're telling me that's no longer any good. So if you want for us to proceed, we're going to have to, I guess, submit to you a new drawing showing the proposed house with the expansion of 10% over the existing footprint. I'm assuming that's what you want to see. And if you approve that, then it's going to be up to Gary to give us a building permit and say what we either are permitted or not permitted to do in terms of how we're going to proceed with that.
I don't think that's going to have any effect.
You're going
So
to,
are
you
you
would
go-
be giving us a variance you would be giving us a variance to expand the existing footprint by 10%.
Square footage.
Square footage, Jay. We've been through this before.
That's,
The two,
Square
it's
footage,
a
right.
one-story building, we are expanding it by 10%.
Jay, if you're going to
That's on the plan.
rebuild the building, it has to be rebuilt as a 1-story building, because that's what it is.
we're
It's a
doing.
non-conforming, and not if you add a second
It has
floor.
to
to it.
also
We're
be
not
a-
adding a second floor. It's a one-story building.
Okay, then you tell me how you go from having 1,800 square feet to 2,848.
The calculation is on the bottom of the map.
No, I disagree, because it says 10% floor area. Okay, that's a
This
lot
is
more than
why I
10%.
This is why I submitted the map to Gary. I asked him to confirm that our
I just
calculation at
think
the
we should
bottom
make
of
a
this
decision
map
whether
was
we're
accurate.
going to give him
If
that
he
or
said
not.
yes, yes. If he
Not,
said no,
let-
we'd have to go back and
let him-
recalculate.
let him
I
do
don't
what
have,
he has
I don't have a response from Gary.
Which document is that you're holding?
This is the map we resubmitted.
But you got a date or anything I can find that?
We submitted 15 copies.
We have that.
What's the date on the document?
Is this it?
Revised April 17, 2019.
Well, this says two-story, or two-family. My
No,
mistake.
two-family. It's single, one story. Has a basement
That's the one that I'm talking.
and one
Okay,
story.
if it's, well, listen, if it says two-story, that's.
4/12/19.
If our
It's
attorney's
this one.
advising us. that if
It's
we allow him to
time-stamped
tear
April
down his
19,
building,
2019.
He loses what he's got.
If that's the one, then it's.
April 19,
Why don't we
2019.
just,
Right, these went from
Let him
Mr. Dillon's
finish.
office, so if that's, if it says two-story, it's there. I apologize for that. It's not a proposed two-story, it's a proposed
It's,
one-story.
yeah, I saw that it was one story. I didn't even read two-story.
Is it on your copy as a one-story?
Yeah.
It is. Okay, I'm looking at the wrong map.
But you're still going footprint on this, right, Jay? You're not going floor area?
I asked Gary to chime in. I mean, we did.
No, in your letter, it seems to go back to, now, like I said, I've gone through this so many times.
Joe, at
Yes,
this point, we're looking at the code where if he plans to demolish and put up a two-family, it's non-conforming. I don't know that we can do anything about that.
No, I
So-
have no problem
So
with
it
a
doesn't matter
non-conforming
whether
thing.
it's,
still-
you know,
whether it's-
2,000 square feet, 3,000 square feet, it's still non-conforming, we can't approve it.
then let's.
That is correct.
Do you know what I'm saying?
But,
So,
but I just don't want to get it at 2,848 square feet, and then we have to say, no, that's too much. If we're, you know what I mean, that's more than he's
Well-
allowed to expand the building.
well, what we need to decide tonight, or whenever, is whether we can approve the plans that he has submitted of a two-family, non-conforming house after he demolishes the non-conforming three-family house.
And our attorney is advising us not to.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to ask for an adjournment so we can revise the plan and bring it back to where we're just going to build over the footprint. And I'll get our
But
opinion from
it has
Gary.
to be a conforming use.
No, it doesn't, because we're not going to demolish.
Oh, you're just going to, well,
gonna
you just said
renovate.
that the engineer said that you had to
We're
demolish
going to
and,
renovate.
But if he's not going to demolish, he doesn't need us.
right. Well, if it's
Yes,
not.
I do, because
Yes,
we're
it's
being-
non-conforming,
we have to go
right.
from a 3 to 2. I absolutely need
Yeah.
it.
If he wants 10%, he'd have to ask
I need
us.
the
Yeah.
10%.
All right, let's see if anybody from the public wants to say anything. Wow. Okay, anyone in the first row wish to speak to this application? Second row? Third row? Fourth row? Fifth row? Sixth row? Side rows? Anybody in the room wish to speak to this application? Do I have a motion to keep the public hearing open, or do we want to close it, or what do we want to do here?
I'm asking for an adjournment. Leave the public hearing open so I can get you the information I need.
All right.
And I also need some direction. Is it you're absolutely, I mean, we know that the footprint I showed you requires a demolition. You don't want that.
If
Because that
you
was
are going to
instructed
demolish
I was
what is
instructed
currently,
last time to present it that way. So,
I'm not so sure, but if you demolish what is currently there, you have lost the protection of the non-conforming use,
that's perfect. Okay, that's what I need.
okay?
Okay.
So you wish to
Yes. we want to
reappear
adjourn,
next month?
Leave the public hearing open and
All right.
we'll bring in new plans.
All right, so do I have a motion to,
One more question here.
okay, Joe, go ahead.
Jay, I don't understand the need for new plans. You have a plan here. What is wrong with this plan? If
It's
you could explain
non-conforming.
It's not what you're going, it's not, you won't allow us to build that.
It's non-conforming.
You're telling
Yeah,
us
well, it's,
we can't build that.
all right, if he built this at a section at a time, is he coming back with a thing to renovate the existing house?
I don't
Or is
know
he
what he's
building
coming
another
back
house?
with.
Jay, please clarify, because we're dancing all over the place on
With
this.
a plan that is going to show a 10% expansion with the house located exactly over.
Hold
the
it, all
existing
stop.
foundation.
10% expansion of what?
What's existing?
The square footage. What does the code say?
The
Whatever the
area.
code- Whatever the code says.
The floor area, floor
That's fine.
area.
That is fine. That's why I sent this to Gary in the first place 3 weeks ago, to get him to confirm that we had done the calculation correctly. I didn't get a response.
All right, but we're clear on this floor area.
I'm doing whatever the code says, and if you said if it says floor area, yes, that's what it will be.
Okay.
Okay, so do I have a motion to keep this public hearing open? Oh, wait a minute, nobody wanted to.
Hear from the members of the public.
Nobody wanted to. Nobody wanted to speak, correct? I don't want to leave anybody out.
Karen,
Okay.
I'll make that motion to bind this over to next month and to keep the public hearing open.
And a second?
If there's hesitation, I'm going to ask that the matter be adjourned, public hearing left open, because we don't have a full board. You offered that we were allowed to have an adjournment for that purpose, to have a full board. So if it has to be for that reason, I'll do that too.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. Then I guess we will have the public hearing next month.
So I'll withdraw the motion then?
Does he withdraw the motion, even though no one seconded it?
Motion is to continue the public hearing. and
But there was no second, but because there's no, right. But he wants it open because we only have 4 board members.
I want to submit more information. I want to get information from the building inspector.
This board presently has 4 members. It's a quorum. 4 members present. There is a quorum.
Okay?
So if you want the board to make a decision this evening,
No.
they can do that.
No.
If you're asking the matter to be adjourned or tabled and the public hearing continued, that's for the board's determination.
Okay. That's what I heard was my choice when Madam Chairman opened the meeting.
My suggestion to the board is that that in fact happen. The matter be continued until next month.
All right, then I'll second that motion.
All right, then Jess, I will reinitiate the motion.
Okay. Do I have a vote to keep this open till next month?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
It's a no, right?
No?
It's a no. Tie vote is a no.
So what are you doing?
Do we close the public hearing now?
No. At this point, there's no action on that motion. The board at this point could move the question if you're inclined to do that.
Move.
Move the question. Either grant the relief, don't grant the relief, or
Do it
continue,
in-
or
do it in
motion to
deliberate-
renew the motion to hold this matter, or to close the public hearing, and not make a decision this evening, but to reserve your decision until next month.
Rob, if the public hearing is not closed by motion, then what is it?
It would stay open.
I'm sorry?
It would stay open.
So,
If you wish to close the public hearing, the motion to do that would be in order. If you do not wish to close the public hearing, you can make that motion. I think it's failed at this point. So a motion at this point to close the public hearing would be in order.
I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing on this application. Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor? Joe, how do you vote?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So the public hearing is closed.
So does the board wish to make a decision on this matter this evening, or do you wish to deliberate and come back next month with a decision one way or the other?
Do we deliberate this evening?
You could.
We are now on the clock for 60 days, correct?
You are.
Then we should deliberate this evening.
I'm going to advise, if I may, I'm going to advise the board I'm advising the board now that we're withdrawing the application. For the record, we are withdrawing the application in its entirety.
So then we do not need to make decision this evening. We don't make a decision at all. There is no
We can't
application.
be forced to take a decision here where we've requested an adjournment. We've come here, it's been 6 months or more since we've been heard. There were many questions that were open, and, we can't be forced to have a decision on this matter where we need to provide additional information to the board. And by the way, we've already told you that the plan that we've submitted is not feasible because because there's at least confusion as to what we were instructed to provide based on the last meeting. We were instructed to provide this plan, and this plan requires a full demolition. The board knew that last time. I'm entitled to supplement my record here.
I
I'm
believe,
entitled to answer your questions. You have a lot of concerns. I'm entitled to answer those. That's all I'm asking. Given an opportunity. It's been 6 months since we've been here.
Karen,
We've worked
excuse me.
hard to get those things done.
Sorry, Jay. I think it's appropriate that the board, there's no harm for the board to take the next 60 days to intake any
He
more.
wants to withdraw
any-
his offer, his application.
Any more information that Chair Gary would give us, and then within 60 days, issue an opinion. I don't know that there's a reason to issue it tonight.
By the way, this board routinely grants adjournments, routinely. I've never seen this board ever deny a request to adjourn a public hearing for more information. Never seen it.
The applicant is free to submit whatever additional materials he would want to submit on the application between now and the time for your decision. So if you wish to entertain that, or Mr. Myra wants to submit additional information on the application, you're free to do that prior to the time that this board might make its decision.
We're going to submit a whole new plan, so I'm not sure what that means. I mean, we can't submit more information to support this plan based on what you've told us.
On that, it may require another application.
Okay, that's why I'm withdrawing. If you're telling me you're not going to reopen this and give us a reasonable time to respond and supplement and possibly answer your questions, then I need to withdraw. It's got to be withdrawn, and because I can't be prejudiced here by a decision.
so
I'll start over if I don't. I have never seen this happen with this board. I have never seen you deny a request for an adjournment. I have not abused this process. I haven't been here in 6 months so I could get all of our ducks in a row here, and now I'm being denied an opportunity to supplement my record to the board. I ask the board to either reconsider leaving the public hearing open for another month so I can answer this, or I'm forced to withdraw the application.
well, we've already taken a vote.
You can withdraw it.
He has the right to withdraw the application.
No.
You also have the right, the question's now been put before you, so you could also make a decision on this application if you
You can
choose
also
to, whether it's
rescind-
withdrawn or not.
You can also rescind your motion to not extend the public hearing and take another vote.
Mr. Myra is correct in that respect as well. You could rescind the motion,
And then
accept additional submissions from Mr. Myra, but he also has the right to do that in the next 60 days.
do you want more information, or do you want him to withdraw his application, resubmit a new one?
Right now, as Rob said, he can submit whatever he wants. The clock is ticking, 60 days. Am I correct?
Not if he withdraws, though, right?
No, that's
Right,
correct.
right.
If he withdraws, the matter's closed, and I would expect there'd be another application for the same relief that's now been described to you. I don't know if that'll happen, but it sounds like that's what Mr. Myra has in mind.
You want to do 60 days and make a decision? We would probably have to.
Withdrawn.
Oh, you're not
I've
going to
withdrawn.
rescind that withdrawal?
Not unless you're going to rescind the motion to close the public hearing. I'm forced to start over. I will start over.
With respect to this, just let me see if I can help the board a little bit. It certainly would be more economic of your time and efforts, as well as funds that have been expended on this application, to leave the matter open. Because if it's closed and Mr. Myra withdraws, he then will have to submit another application. He'll have to get another determination from Gary, and you'll be back to where we are this evening.